Hey everybody, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill here. Welcome to my channel. So today we are going to start this page using a variety of collage papers. Not just one, but a variety. So what you want to do is go to your stash and pull out coordinating collage papers. Here I've gone with deep violet and blue as the basic colors. And the what you see me gluing down right now is actually blue and white stripes from a magazine. So it could be a magazine. On the right, there's some stenciling that I've done on deli paper. I've got some that I've done on coffee filters. I like using different papers and different patterns. Now, this is simply creating the color base for your page. Some of this is going to peek through. Some of this is going to inform our color scheme. It will inform our color scheme because I'm going deep violet and blue. And as you see, as we progress through this page, some of the design elements, the patterns that are there, are going to shine through and guide other decisions down the road. But at this stage, all I'm doing is just putting down coordinating papers and covering pretty much every inch of my art journal page. I'm gluing this down with matte medium, and I'm using that instead of fluid matte medium simply because I want to use up what's in the jar. I'm almost at the end. So here is a coffee filter. I love colorizing coffee filters and then using them on my page. I apologize for the croakiness of my voice. I had some surgery and I'm still recovering from that. But I wanted to get this voiceover done. So I've got a gel print there, a magazine paper, a couple copy filters, and something that I stenciled on deli paper. I like using different types of collage papers on a page. Each one gives a little something different, different textures, different, it glues down differently, and just gives you a variety, which is what I want. So as I said, from this collaged background of collage paper, so go use your stash. I now have my color base. So I could just do lots of these, pick a different color scheme and do up collage papers, kind of assembly line, and then have a whole variety of backgrounds to continue working on. So we want this to dry and then just cut off the excess. I really am liking these stripes, but the blue isn't quite the same as the blue elsewhere. I wanted it to coordinate a little bit more, so I'm just taking a paintbrush and giving it a wash of a blue that is closer to that top right-hand coffee filter. So now I want to add some texture and maybe a little more pattern. So I'm grabbing the TCW modeling paste, putting it on a key card and grabbing this stencil. I'll put the name in the description box and just adding this. And I like working in odd numbers, so I'm going to put this in 3 places. This, I'm kind of going over the seams of where one collage paper meets the other just to push that back so it doesn't look like a patchwork quilt. And just adding another geometric pattern to what I had as the base color. When you put modeling paste, you want to give it time to dry. You can use a heat tool. I prefer just letting it sit off to the side and then I go do something else. So I've covered up some of the pattern there, but now we're going to put some gesso on to further soften those seams between one collage paper and the other. And this is what I call the magic of gesso, because at this stage, it just softens those edges, it melds or blends everything together, and turns these isolated items that we've glued down on the page. It just seems to coordinate them. I'm just following my instincts. I do not have a set plan about where I'm going to put them. This is also adding some white space to my overall project. And I just keep doing this until it feels right, until I like what I see. Sometimes at this, I'll turn the page and get an idea of where I want it to go. I'm going over top of the modeling paste. I'm going over top of some of the collage papers. And you can see this is now becoming more of a background. When you look at this, you don't see those 5 collage papers that I glued down. Now remember, those collage papers that I put down were the base layer. They informed and will inform the color scheme and some of my choices. Now here I decided to add some contrasting drippage. I got black paint, I water it down, and I'm rubbing it across the top of the page and letting it drip. Now, this is not my comfort zone. Doing drippage is something I see people doing. I like the effect. I typically don't like it when I do it, but I keep every once in a while, I just bring out that technique and give it another try. And I'm liking the contrast that this is giving. It's very organic, very unpredictable. You can't really control it to some degree, but I'm liking the organicness of it. I'm liking the boldness as it goes across. I'm just embracing it. So here I'm adding a little bit more. I was thinking, you know what? I'm going to go with it. Because doing an art journal page sometimes is all about experimenting with different techniques, experimenting with different colors. And if you don't try these things and continue to try them, you never get better at them and you are missing out. Here I'm trying to decide, do I like it? Do I not like it? I like drippage when it gets in between, when you have modeling paste there and it diffuses into that. Just adding more of the watered down paint to get the drippage to go a little bit further. So now I'm going to add some color and a little bit more pattern by stamping it. I'm putting the deep violet acrylic paint on this dot stamp and stamping that. And I'm targeting, again, I'm going over the border lines or the seams between one element and another. And this kind of unifies it, adds that little pop of color. So as you go, it's kind of a dance. You have it, you add white, then you add something colored, and then you add more white, or it's kind of a back and forth. But don't be afraid to play. And I say you just keep going till it gets to where you want. So now I have some of that deep violet on my makeup sponge, and I'm just going to add some solid areas of that deep violet. And I'm just rubbing the makeup sponge lightly over some of the violet areas that were collage papers initially on top of the modeling paste. I'm taking charge and deciding, okay, what do I want this to look like? Adding it on top of the gessoed area makes it very cloudy and ethereal, like right now I'm really noticing the stripes. And I said, some of those elements that were there from the beginning, from those collage papers, are going to shine through and direct a later step. And that stripe element is just really calling to me. And then I remembered I had this stripe stencil. This was something I think I picked up at Walmart years and years ago, haven't used it in years. And I grabbed it, its exact width of those stripes, and I'm enhancing those stripes, adding to the stripes that were there from the magazine paper. And now this is on top of all those layers that I built. So something that was there on the first layer that had been pushed back to some degree, I'm now using that. And I wouldn't have reached for this stencil if I hadn't used that magazine paper. So even though a lot of that got covered up, got pushed back, it is driving my decision making here. And I'm absolutely loving it. This stencil is not going back into the far reaches of my stash. It is something that you're going to see me playing with a lot because I really like it and I see potential for using it. So then I decide I'm going to add some stripes on the bottom, but instead of doing the purple, or the blue, I'm grabbing white acrylic paint and I'm going to make it white. So again, I have the same stencil. I'm doing it on the opposite side, but in a light dark version. So you're kind of getting that positive negative effect. And I like that swoop across the page on either side. Now, if you don't have a stencil like this is an easy one to cut out of tag board or even stencil material. You're just cutting out strips. I want to bring out some of the texture that I put in with the model. I'm just adding white paint to my makeup sponge and then rubbing lightly on it, and magically it's brought out the texture, that pattern to the top. So you see the dance here. Things that were in the background, you bring to the forefront, and you can now select those. I wanted to add some script stamping, and I decided I'm going to stamp with white. I wanted to lighten the overall look. So I'm targeting, again, the seamed areas between different colors and patterns, and some of the darker areas where that white is really going to show up. Never in a million years would I have imagined where I started to where I ended up. It is a journey, and you just need to get on board and just play. I could never totally duplicate this page. Loving the colors, loving that stripe stencil, loving all the little details and even the drippage that comes around. So I think my background is done, and I'm just taking my angle brush and shading or edging the entire page. Just frames it and lets me figure out, am I really done? I'm thinking, oh, I love this stencil. This is going to go somewhere. I'm going to keep it. I like this swoop. So I'm going to keep that. I'm going to put my focal image kind of here so I don't cover up the swoop because I like how it frames the focal image. And I grabbed a sentiment from my Winged Wonders sentiment pack. My sentiment packs, they are digital. You can purchase them at NINNYSNAPKINS.com. The nice thing about them is you can, with the settings on your printer, make them bigger, make them smaller to fit whatever substrate you're working on. So I'm just gluing my sentiment and this owl printable down with fluid matte medium. And you can see the way I cut apart my sentiment, and I'm kind of layering it a little bit. That's the other thing you can do with digital stamps or digital sentiments that you can't really do with a stamped sentiment. Reorganize the words and make it really your own. So once that's completely dry, my printable here, it was a little faded, some of the lines, and I just wanted to darken them to make the focal image stand out. So I grabbed my fine line brush and black paint that I've thinned down a little bit, and I'm just going over the areas. Here I'm taking one of those lines and the stick that the owl was on and combining that drippage line with that to get that horizontal line that's going through. So I made the drippage work. And then I'm just darkening all the areas. But I've decided because I love my background so much, I'm just going to leave this owl black and white. I don't want to add color. But you could easily put a layer of color on it, whatever color, natural colors and go gray or brown or, fantasy colors, any color of the rainbow that you want it to be. So again, the trick with using the fine line brush is to thin the paint. So here I've grabbed the stylus, I'm dipping it in the paint and just reinforcing and darkening these hearts that are on the breast of the owl. And I'm making sure that this is getting some time to dry because I don't want to smear it. Then I decided I want to add some shading around the owl in an attempt to, again, make the owl stand out from the background. And by giving it shading or highlights, it does that. And then to go with that, in the hopes of bringing it out, I grab my fine line applicator bottle and I'm adding some line work, tracing around the owl with the black shading and the applicator. It really brings out the owl, makes it stand out from my background. Adding some dots. And then I'm adding some shading around the sentiments, again, to bring them out. And then more outlining since I liked it around the owl, but we'll bring that in here. And then I'm going around the page too with a sketchy line. Being careful not to put my wrist in the wet paint. And then I decided I'm going to add a little bit of a splatter that just brings everything together, but I try not to get the splatter on the owl. So I'm just kind of targeting the backgrounds. This paint is just white paint that I have thinned and just have it in a container like this because I do a lot of splatters. And there is the finished page. I hope you love it as much as I do. If you like that stripe stencil, I challenge you to go with tagboard or stencil material and cut yourself your own and use it on your next art journal page. Until next time, go get creative.